fascination with words began long before I became a librarian. From a very young age, I'd been a cruciverbalist. That's a word you may not have heard of, unless you too are a cruciverbalist. It's a word not even Microsoft Word has heard of, hence that annoying red underline applied by their ill-educated spell checker. Interesting word, spell checker. So many different meanings. Being a cruciverbalist, I habitually parse. That means breaking a word down into its constituent parts, seeking out new words within that word in so doing. The relevance of this will soon become clear. The doctor's taking a long time. Last week the council announced a new round of library closures, and right at the top, Athelston Library. It was first alphabetically, but I couldn't help thinking it was a personal slight. I got enemies. I seem to attract them somehow. Clever people often do. And the worst thing is, I can't even fight back. I'm strictly forbidden from campaigning as an employee of the library service. There is a campaign against the closure, however, and as my wife is not an employee of the library service, I sent her along to the first meeting, little suspecting what a Pandora's box I'd opened. Come on, doctor. Meeting finished at 9. Laura arrived home at 10:30. Had been down the pub with a woman she'd met. Gudrun, German apparently. Very bubbly, said Laura. What? Like a snail, I asked. I mean, does she actually emit bubbles, or is it a digestive disorder? I don't like the word bubbly, in case you hadn't guessed. We went to bed. As is my habit, I curled up behind her. Laura, it has to be said, is not the sylph I married, but she does still afford some comfort, and my right hand does just about still fit over her right breast, which is where I placed it. Nothing unusual in that. We've been cuddling up this way for 25 years. What was unusual was her reaction. Removed my hand, and when I protested I simply wanted a cuddle, she said, and I quote, "That's not cuddling, that's molesting." Well, you can imagine how that made me feel. Molesting is a horrible word. And to make matters worse, it passes into mole sting, which troubles me no end. For whilst moles may bite, it is an incontestable fact that they do not sting. If she'd accused me of molestation, it would have been no better, because the idea of a mole catching a bus or a train is frankly ridiculous. Very tense next morning. I asked Laura what she had planned. She said, another meeting with Gudrun. Odd, I replied, to have meetings on consecutive days. Oh, that's because yesterday's meeting elected a steering committee, said Laura, and I'm on it, with Gudrun. What exactly does Gudrun do? I asked. Oh, she's a relationship counsellor, said Laura. My worst fears were confirmed. Who better to fuck up a relationship than a so-called relationship counsellor? That night, I laid my hand on Laura's shoulder and asked her if it was all right. It's okay, she said. But if I move it to your breast? I don't want that, she replied. I see, I said, although you've been fine with it for the last 25 years. No, I haven't, she replied. I just didn't say anything. Oh, Gudrun really has got you dancing to her tune, hasn't she? I said. What does that mean? She replied. Seems to me, I said, that she's got more of an agenda than just saving the library. She's passionate about saving the library, says Laura. Passionate. Now there's the word of the moment, I replied. Is there an MP in Parliament who isn't passionate about one thing or another. Do you know what? I really am growing to detest that woman. You've never met her, said Laura. I've met her type, I replied. She's not a type, Laura protests. I left it there. I knew I wouldn't sleep. My mind was whirring with all the different meanings of type, just as it was whirring with all the different meanings of mole, a rodent, a breakwater, a Mexican sauce, or the sort of spy who gets inside your life and undermines it. Oh, why didn't I bring a crossword? Well, you can imagine how I reacted when Laura said she was going to a third meeting that week. No, I said, absolutely not. The house is in a mess. The kids have hardly seen you. This whole thing is getting out of hand. But we've got a meeting with a counsellor, Laura replies. There's a real chance that the council may back down. I doubt it, I said. Oh, you haven't seen Gudrun in action, she replies. Oh, well, that doesn't paint a pretty picture, I said. You've never met her, says Laura. I wish you hadn't, I replied. Oh, for God's sake. She's on the verge of saving your job. You should be bloody thankful to her. I'd never heard Laura swear before. Her eyes were flaming, defiant. What would happen if I pushed it? Locked the door, maybe. Then I had another thought. Why not hold a meeting here? I suggested. I thought you weren't allowed to be involved, she replied. Well, perhaps I could make the tea, I replied sarcastically. Well, I suppose I could ask, she said. Oh, wait. Door's opening. Woman coming out. Not long now. When the meeting came round, I planned exactly what I was going to say to her. Then we would see how she would take to being undermined. But as Laura opened the door and I heard their conspiratorial whispers, the prepared script went right out of my mind. I marched downstairs to confront this supposed superwoman that my wife was so much in awe of, only to find a person whose appearance was frankly insipid. Roomy eyes, unkempt hair, beige trouser suit. It was quite obvious that this woman had turned her own inadequacies into a war on other women's husbands. The husbands she couldn't get for herself, maybe. I'm Matthew Dawson, I said. Welcome to the happy home you've done your best to destroy. She observed me with a mixture of alarm and confusion. Matthew, this is Alice Davis, Laura said. The counsellor who wants to save your job? Oh, sorry, I said, I thought you were another woman. The doorbell rang and Laura did admit another woman. Wrapped her eyes, cheekbones like Anne Margaret, and a smile like a summer's day. Matthew, she said, we meet at last, kissing me on both cheeks in the continental fashion. Well, I have good news for you. I am going to save your library. What's that on your neck? She touched me on the side of the neck. I felt a sharp pain, like a match burn. Does that hurt? She said. Yes, I said. It stings. A mole that stings. You'd better see a doctor. Doctor. Let's pass it. Dock, an area for ships to disembark, or broad-leaved weed. Tor, a high hill, usually rocky. Strange how the brain can do two things at once, especially during a panic. I am passing the word as I am explaining to Dr. Malik that there's something strange on my neck, and she is inspecting it with her practiced fingers. And then the passing stops, and there is a moment of complete suspense as the doctor resumes her seat and prepares her words. It's not a mole, she says. It's what's called a seborrheic wart. I think there's a small boil underneath it. Should clear up in a few days. Thank you, I said. Thank you very much. There's a wart clinic tomorrow afternoon, says Dr. Malik. Would you like me to make you an appointment to have it removed? I thought for a moment. Oh, no, I can't do that, I replied. There's a meeting. I have to make the tea.